Hello, everyone.
I'm very happy to see everybody dialing from all parts of the world. And I think this is a great presentation put together by AMLBot. Obviously, a very successful on-chain screening tool. Personally, I have used it, and I think a lot of companies are benefiting from this software all around the world. So today will be a great chance for us to discuss some of the regulations and opportunity that exist in this country, and what does it mean for all of your businesses around the world.
One more minute. I see people still joining. And another question while we are waiting for you is if you are already representing a business, maybe you can also type like 1-2 word what your business is doing. Is it a crypto exchange, crypto platform, something related to investment services? Or maybe token issuance? Or maybe crypto payments, payment gateway? So we have one crypto exchange from Indonesia. Okay, nice. We have a law firm from UK. Canadian business.
This is a very good mixture. Very good. Very good. Yeah.
I have legal compliance, the business itself. Okay, so I would also expect a lot of questions from you guys. Okay, I think we can start. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. My name is Niko Demchuk, and I'm a lawyer at AMLBot, and I will be your host for today. Thank you again, everyone, for joining to explore crypto regulation around the world. We already have around 6-5 webinars about crypto regulation in EU, in Bermuda, in El Salvador, in Turkey. And now it's time for Canada, our focus for today. To begin with, let me outline today's discussion. So we will start with the overview of Canada crypto regulation, processes, hands-on experiences, with an emphasis on licensing requirements and compliance expectation. And for this, I invited the expert from Canada. And the last 10-15 minutes, we will spend for addressing your questions. So you can ask questions during our webinar, or also you will have time to do that in the end of our webinar. And now let me introduce our speaker, Issac Ru, an architect of the first regulated stablecoin in Canada, and also FinTech and compliance expert. Issac Ru, can you please also tell us more about yourself?
Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. I'm very happy to be here. Just to keep it short, I've been in crypto for quite a few years now. And since 2017, 2018, when the first ICO regulation came out in Canada. And I have my background in risk and compliance from a banking perspective. And when I was at banks, I worked with many fintechs, payment company, and MSPs as they come into the bank and working with the banking infrastructure to offer new products to the retail markets, and to add obviously new payment methods to the lives we live, such as crypto payments, and a mixture of both crypto and fiat payments. So yes, very happy to be here, and I have helped many companies to succeed in Canada or use Canada as a base to launch their global business. So very happy to be here, and I think we have a very good crowd from all over the world. So I'm happy to dive into the questions.
Okay, thank you. And let's get started. My first question will be, of course, about crypto laws in Canada. And let me start with my personal perspective, how I would see Canada, yes, knowing that Ethereum, yes, one of the most successful cryptocurrency, was also developed in Canada, I would personally expect maybe Canada to be more upfront in terms of fintech, in terms of crypto, blockchain developments, regulations, etc. Maybe some specific laws, the same that the European Union did with MiCA. But personally, I don't see it that much. Maybe it's just my personal perception because I'm not aware, I'm not an expert in Canada, so that's why I'm telling my personal opinion. I am aware that Canada is still very popular, and there are many businesses who went there to be regulated and to get FINTRAC registration. We will talk more about this. But when talking to business that are already there or that were considering Canada, their feedback is different. And one of the, let's say, aspects when they look at and considering Canada, they say that sometimes it's very difficult to navigate in terms of crypto regulation, in terms of who is responsible for what rules to follow in Canada, because there is, I understand, some state regulations and there is the province bodies and can be also some regulation or laws that are very particular to the special, like a Quebec region or to another region. Also, there are different regulatory bodies, including Canadian Security Administrators, Investment Industry Regulatory Organization of Canada, FinTrac, the Bank of Canada, and they all also have some relation to crypto. So that's why sometimes business says that these bodies, regulatory bodies, very often do not work in coordination, but rather in parallel. And then it's difficult to know what they need to follow, where they need to contact to, etc. So can you please bring us more clarity? What is going on now in Canada in terms of crypto regulation, in terms of regulatory bodies, who is responsible for what, so the business will have better clarity?
That is a very excellent question, Nico, and I think that is in the minds of many people who are here today. So if I may ask you to bring up the first slide of our presentation, and I want to be able to show you guys what we are currently looking at from a high level, from a regulatory perspective, what we're dealing with, and how can you as a business owner succeed from being part of this regulatory environment. So I want to talk a little bit about the registration-based system versus the license-based system that currently exists in the world. So registration-based system is the predominant system that exists in Canada for regulations that Nick just spoke about, whether from an AML perspective, from a retail payments perspective, or from a securities perspective. And the reason why I bring this up is very important because this is what ultimately sets this market different from other markets and why Canada still remains as a competitive market for business to come here to incorporate and to grow their business. So one of the key advantage of a registration-based system is that it has a relatively business-friendly barrier for a company to come here and to follow the rules and to be regulated. That is very important because in the registration-based system, essentially you have a set of rules and you basically voluntarily tell the regulator that you want to be part of this rule and you want to subject yourself under these rules and you want to follow these rules. And you will register yourself with the regulator and say that I am part of this registration and I would like to comply with the rules that you currently have. So this is fundamentally different from the license-based system, which currently exists, I believe, in the UK, EU, or other places of the world, where you have to apply for a registration and then you have to apply for a license. And the license review period could take up very long time, which, at the end of it, you'll be given sort of a licensing regime to allow you to conduct business. Where in Canada, it is a little bit faster. You register, you commit yourself to the rules, and it's very clear. And from the get-go, you're able to be a regulated entity and you can start doing business. So this is very important. So I just want to clarify that from the beginning. So all three sets of these regulations are part of that registration-based system. So you register, you voluntarily comply with the rules, and then you start doing your business. There are a couple of reasons why this system exists in Canada versus other places. The license-based system is because from a regulator perspective, every regulator has a finite amount of regulation, but they don't want to stifle business. They want the business to grow. They want more business to grow, and they want more competition in the market. So therefore, they have limited their resources to an ongoing supervision and monitoring perspective, where the companies who come here to register voluntarily will be subject to an ongoing supervision and monitoring. So if you become a registered entity in Canada, let's say with FinTrac as an MSP, you will be subject to the regulation, and from time to time, you will be selected to be audited based on the type of business you carry out. And from there, the regulator can assess whether you as a regulated entity are complying with the rules. But the regulators are not doing that for every single entity. So again, this is very competitive compared to some of the licensing-based system that currently exists outside of this country. Now, as you can see in front of you, there are three principal regulators and regulations that are applicable for FinTech, payments, and crypto businesses. So I want to just focus on the first one, which is the Proceeds of Crime, Money Laundering, and Terrorist Financing Act, which is the predominant act for the FINTRAC, which is called the Financial Transaction and Reports Analysis Center of Canada. This is a federal agency and the sole agency that is responsible for the monitoring and the data reporting of AML-related items in this country. And so this is predominantly our AML regulator. And as Nico has said, that we also have provincial regulators such as Revenue Quebec, who is also mandating a provincially licensed MSP regime. And in the future, I believe that British Columbia may follow suit. We may also have a British Columbia-based licensing MSP registration or licensing regime that goes in parallel with the federal MSP registration. Now, your question will be, what is the difference? Why do I need this? So specific provinces in Canada are requiring businesses to have dual registrations if their business is to solicit activities in their province. And for now, that is Quebec. But for you to have an MSP, let's say registration from FinTrac, and let's say you do not do business in Quebec, you're okay with the rest of this country at this very moment. But if you want to do business in Quebec, then you have to solicit a MSP license in Quebec, not a registration. So the regime in Quebec is slightly different. And FinTrac regulates not just MSP, but everybody. We're talking about banks, we're talking about casinos, we're talking about securities dealers, we're talking about precious metal dealers. So a whole array of entities are part of FinTrac's regulation. So that's very important. FinTrac is the ultimate federal AML regulator for everybody in this country. The next one is the Retail Payments Activity Act, which is an act that was recently passed. It came about in 2021. And the Bank of Canada has been given the mandate to enforce RPA in this country. Now, and you will ask yourself the question is, what does that mean? How is it different from FinTrac's MSB registration? Because some of you may be aware that FinTrac MSB registration in the past included PSP as part of the activity to the registration. Now, the mandate of the two agencies are fundamentally different. So again, as I said, FinTrac's mandate is to regulate AML, so anti-money laundering and terrorist financing, where the Bank of Canada's mandate is to supervise the payment service providers in this country, where they want to promote compliance and they want to monitor and evaluate the trends and the issues in the payment system. So this is ultimately very different from the mandate that FinTrac currently has. And what does it mean by promote compliance? Maybe does it mean it includes AML? If you read the 80 plus pages that currently exist on the Bank of Canada's website about PSB's obligations, a very core important part of that is to safeguard client funds as a payment service provider. So ultimately, that is one of the key things that Bank of Canada wants to stress if you're operating as a payment service provider in this country. And again, the Bank of Canada is responsible to take in everybody's information, everybody's issues, and obviously to discuss that with Payment Canada, which is one of our biggest organizations in this country that is responsible for the payment rails, the fiat payment rails in this country. How does that relate to crypto? Very good question, because we have seen hundreds, if not thousands, of companies in last November to register as a PSP with the Bank of Canada. Most of these registrations are currently still pending under a national securities review, which is administered by the Minister of Finance in this country. So we are expecting this review to be completed. And there may be another round of application that will be available for companies to register at a later part of this year. And a lot of the payment companies who also deals in crypto are registered there because they themselves fulfill the criteria of being a PSP in this country, which we can look at in the next slide. Lastly, I just want to quickly talk about securities regulation. What does it mean to be registered as a, let's say, a crypto trading platform in this country, which is the regulatory terminology that defines what a crypto exchange is in Canada under a regulated status. Now, the Canadian securities regulation is very different compared to, let's say, the U.S., which is administered federally from the SEC. In Canada, the securities regulations are predominantly regulated by the provinces and territories. However, it works in harmony under the national instruments, which is a regulatory rule and standard adopted by all the provinces and administered and created by the Canadian Securities Administration. So the CSA ultimately is an administration body that looks after the harmonization and the standard of rules that are being adopted and applied in different provinces and territories. So what you see in front of you is a new regulator called the Canadian Investment Regulatory Organization. And this organization came about very recently in 2023. And this regulatory body is the result of an amalgamation of three prior regulatory body, which is the National Self-Regulatory Organization, the SRO, the Investment Industry Regulatory Organization of Canada, so IROC, and lastly, the Mutual Fund Dealers Association, MFDA, in Canada. So the amalgamation of these three regulators became zero in 2023, and now this is the national regulator that regulates security. Now, to the question of what does that mean to crypto companies? So again, if you want to operate as a crypto trading platform in this country, you would need to register with one of whichever provincial regulator that you deem fits your business, or across all provincial regulators in this country, mostly under National Instrument 31103. And if you're looking at potentially issue a fund of some sort, we're maybe looking at National Instrument 81102 CP. So all of that are part of the securities regulation. And just think about the securities trading platform as companies like Crypto.com, Coinbase, Kraken, some of the bigger names. Those are the companies who are currently registered either as an investment dealer or a restricted dealer from the past to operate as a crypto trading platform in this country. Now, some of you have read the restricted dealer status as a country. So that one is actually was an interim solution between in the early days of crypto trading platform being regulated to now where the zero regulator body, who is going to be the predominant entity that oversees every crypto trading platform in this country. And it has been advised and recommended that if you are looking to become a crypto trading platform right now in Canada to submit a new application, you would just submit a new investment dealer application to Zero to become a crypto trading platform. Sorry, that was a lot of talking, but Nico, I'm going to give it back to you, and then you can proceed on to the next question.
Yeah. But let me maybe a bit to clarify, to summarize what you just mentioned, because also in my head there is a lot of information still going on and processing. So what I also know, and based on the, let's say, current practice, there are many businesses that go to Canada and they issue just a FinTech registration, which is again identifies them or defines them as a MSB, correct?
Sure. Yeah.
And usually they don't go to any other kind of licensing or registration.
Sure.
So then, in my head, I'm trying to understand why. Maybe let's say if there is a business that do crypto exchange and they do crypto to crypto exchange, not crypto to fiat exchange.
Yeah.
In this simple business, do they need only this FINTRAC registration would be sufficient, or they would still need to do some sort of legal analysis because they may fall under a payment service provider and they will need also to go for a payment license?
So your question is very specific. We're talking about crypto to crypto trading. And do I need more than an MSB registration, which allows me to conduct dealings in virtual currencies? The key differential here is that are you holding on to client assets? That's the key question. Because if you're doing an immediate delivery of a crypto trade, okay, so if I come in with a non-custodial wallet and I say, Nico, I want to trade crypto with you, and I have Bitcoin, can I get some USDC in return? Okay, and Nico Inc. says, sure, we can do that. As an MSB, we're allowed to do that. I send you the Bitcoin, and then you send me the USDC in return immediately. You do not hold on to my assets because I have my own wallet, and my wallet is not controlled by you. The assets of that wallet is not owned by you. Now, if we look at companies like Coinbase, Kraken, a lot of these companies, they offer custodial wallets, which a lot of people use. They're very comfortable, and sometimes they prefer to have their wallets administered by a platform because sometimes they feel they'll lose the wallets and etc. So that is the fundamental differentiator. So if the platform is going to hold on to client assets, for example, then they most likely will come under the zero regulation for as a crypto trading platform. That is the fundamental difference. Now, there's also the question of what kind of crypto are you allowed to offer to the client? This is a very big question because there are crypto assets that are being viewed as not a security, and there are crypto assets that are viewed as a security. To publicly offer securities like crypto assets on your platform may trigger further securities regulations. So again, there is a difference between Nico operating, for example, an OTC desk where we're doing swap of crypto, and there's another type of business where you're publicly soliciting essentially investments from the retail markets of crypto assets that may be seen as a security in Canada.
Mm-hmm. And I understand also, thank you, now it's clear. And I understand also when you allow also exchange crypto to fiat, that's the moment where you might also need a payment institution license. Am I correct? Or
so again, that if I am giving you crypto and you're giving me fiat in return, again, the fundamental difference is, are you holding on to my client fund? Okay, right? So the fiat fund, right? So if you're holding on to client's fiat fund, then the RPA will come in because all the 5 criteria, if we move on to the second page, of the 5 criteria that are available for payment service providers, holding on to client funds is one of them. So if you're holding on to client's fiat fund as a result of a payment transaction, then it is most likely you are a payment service provider, and therefore you are subject to the registration of Bank in Canada's RPA requirements.
Okay. So I see we are slowly moving on to my second question, which exactly would be then how does the business should know what they actually need to apply to? Because I understand just a FINTRAC registration in some cases would not be sufficient. So they will need to go to some other regulation, whether it's an investment or whether it's a payment related. And then it depends on what they're doing. So I'm a lawyer, so then I would see myself, if I would choose Canada to open the business there, of course, then maybe the first step would be is just to go to legal experts like you, our law firms who will do a business analysis, and then they will come out with the conclusion, what type of licenses do you need? And then depending on the types, I understand, then the requirements might also be different. I understand to receive FINTRAC registration is very easy, very straightforward, and very fast. And to receive another sort of licenses, whether it's a payment or investment, this is all different story. Maybe you can also bring here a bit more clarity, differences between different licenses, requirements.
Yes. So Nick, you hit the nail right on his head. So each business is different. So obviously we have a array of different business in our audience today. So every business is unique. And so we will need to look at every business, see what is the most business-friendly registration process for you. I think we don't want to overcomplicate things. And we want to make sure that whatever the registration you undertake is the best for your business, and you can grow from there. And you're not being over-regulated, and your business is not being put on hold because some of these regulatory environment. And that is the whole reason why I believe the registration-based system in Canada offers a unique opportunity for especially startups from the early stages where they want to be compliant. They want to, they want to do the right thing. But unfortunately, in some of their home jurisdiction, the process of those licenses may take too long. So that's why the registration system in Canada is an opportunity for them to come here to comply and ultimately to take advantage of the retail markets that we have here for their payments, for their crypto businesses. So it is very attractive. And in terms of the process of each registration, again, I don't want to go into the specifics because all those information are public knowledge. And what we can help companies that we could help them to devise their application form and to troubleshoot any of the issues that they may or may not have. And then we want to make sure that they're registrating their business in the most accurate format with FinTrac, with Bank of Canada, or potentially if they're looking to deal with the securities regulator, we get the right legal team who has experience to help them to succeed in that world, because it can be very complicated. But our job is to make sure that we minimize the financial burdens and the regulatory burdens for our business when tackling these applications and registration.
Okay, clear. Then, in terms of process and cost time frame, how long will it take, for example, to receive FinTrac registration? How long will it take to receive a payment license and investment license, based on your experience? And also in terms of general costs, if you can tell, so maybe there are some listeners who are considering opening the business in Canada, so it will be very valuable information for them.
Yes, very valid question. What I can say is the timeline has gotten a little bit longer compared to the past. However, it still remains much, much shorter and much, much more simpler in comparison to jurisdiction like the UK or the EU, for example. So I would say that for an MSB registration, we're possibly looking at anywhere between 4 to 6 months for registration time. However, if it comes in sooner, we're very happy. Sometimes it could take a little bit longer. Nobody outside of FinTrac has any control over that. The RPA, Bank of Canada, PSB registration, I believe last year I helped a few companies to complete their registration in November, which their names came up roughly around February and March. So currently all the companies who registered last year are still undergoing the national securities review. So Bank of Canada will make the PSB portal for registration available when it comes to that time. Maybe it's in November, maybe it's earlier, maybe it's a bit later, but we'll monitor that progress. And when it becomes available, we can help the right business who come here to do their registration.
Okay.
And then lastly, for the securities one, that is the big one. So just to give you guys some high level expectation, companies like Kraken, it took them almost 2 years to get your securities registration in place. So it is a huge undertaking that's very complicated, and is typically reserved for very established business. And there are capital requirements, and there are many, many things that you need to do, such as custodian arrangement, IT security, and all that. So again, a very long process, but if you're internationally a well-established crypto trading firm, and if you like to come into Canada, there is a process for that.
Okay, so you mentioned about FinTrac registration, yes, that it will take approximately from 3 to 6 months, correct?
Yeah.
And I understand in terms of also the cost is also not very high. So it's relatively a straightforward process. My personal understanding, FinTrac mostly cares about AML policies and procedures of the company, maybe screening some UBOs, etc. But it's not that they will look also like MiCA requirements. There are tons of other requirements. So it's easier. So that's why I also agree with you when you say for startups to receive this registration, to start working is very good because it's very fast and not so costly process, etc. And being also in the market, like into many businesses, what I also noticed from my experience, that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, there were many companies who were doing jurisdiction shopping. They were looking for a jurisdiction to receive a license or registration, to be regulated, let's say. And many of them went to Canada because, as I said, it was relatively very easy to receive the FinTrack registration. And for those businesses, it was already sufficient. They could easily show it to their banking partners, their crypto exchange platforms, etc., open account there and operate. But what I also noticed is that very often this process was done by some consulting firm, etc., let's say with the templates used, and some of the businesses did not really, let's say, dive deeper into what are the requirements, what they really need to do. And now I hear that some of them started to receive questions from the supervisory authority, or they are doing some audits, and that's where the problem starts or something starts, and now they're looking maybe to relocate or to leave Canada. Do you have any comments on this? Because for me, like when I was working in Estonia in 2017, 18, 19, it was also these years where Estonia was one of the first countries who transposed the AML directive in European Union. Let's say crypto licenses, where businesses were able to receive crypto licenses, the first in the world. And there were many businesses coming to Estonia receiving these crypto licenses. There were many companies that were doing this in like with templates and everything. And those businesses did not really care what they need to do. They received the license. They did not really do good AML KYC process, but they were marketed. We are licensed in Estonia. And for them it was like a something trust that they could give to their users. And like 2-3 years ago, my perception that it was the same case with Canada. Maybe the process of FINTRAC registration is not very thorough, and the regulators were giving these registrations to everyone, not really checking not only papers checking what is written, but also in process what is done in process. So do you have any comments on this and what is going on now? Because now I understand FinTech started to be more active, and that's where the problem started.
So first of all, I would like to say that Canada is a very competitive market for any business to be part of. And the reason why I'm here talking to you, Nick, is that I want to continue to advocate for Canada and advocate for business to come to Canada and to take advantage of its retail consumers, of its market size, and to come here to be regulated as a company which has one of the most progressive regulatory regime in the world for crypto, and is a growing crypto market. Now, to your question about jurisdictional shopping, I unfortunately cannot comment on that because I can only speak on the experience that I have come across myself. Companies who choose to do that themselves, they must have various reasons to do that. But I do agree with you that FinTrack, as a regulator, is examining registered entities as to where their home-based jurisdiction is, and do they really provide services to Canadians, or are they really part of the Canadian market? Now, this question is ongoing. FinTrack is conducting audits and examinations of many reporting entities along the line. MSD is one of them. And I like to just highlight the FATF examination of Canada, which is coming around the corner. And that, at the end of that examination, I believe the question of MSB registration or potential jurisdictional shopping may come to light. So I'm going to leave that to the regulator to comment. Again, I think my goal is so that I want to sell Canada as a market, and I want to make sure that all the business who come into this jurisdiction do the right thing, and they can succeed in the business that they're building.
Okay, thank you. Then let's move to maybe one of the questions that also what we are doing at AMLBot, compliance, AML, KYC. So in this regard, one of the headache that, for example, we have in European Union and in other countries that already implemented fast travel rule. So maybe you can also bring us a bit of light about, is also fast travel rule compulsory, obligatory in Canada? And in terms of AML KYC, is there any peculiarities, or basically it's very straightforward process like everywhere else?
Yes. So I use AMLBots myself every day. And it is probably one of the best tools out there for companies to fulfill their regulatory obligations when it comes to transaction monitoring. their regulatory reporting, and their regulatory record-keeping obligations. And I have seen AMLBot fulfilling all of those requirements for companies. And in comparison to some of the other vendors out there, I think it is very competitive in its pricing and its packaging. So it is, and it has a great API solution to plug into your existing platform. Also wishes to make business owners feel at ease that all of their regulatory obligations are delivered through a simple API call where AMLBots can conduct all of these on-chain analysis, on-chain reviews, on-chain risk ratings, and etc. So one of the best tools out there.
Thank you. Is fast travel also obligatory in Canada for businesses to follow? And is there also a threshold? Like some countries do have thresholds, some countries don't. Do we have this threshold in Canada?
Sorry, can you just repeat that question again? Sorry, what is the threshold?
Fast travel rule.
Yes. So travel rule is it is something that all the companies here in Canada as a regulated entity must follow. So again, there are reporting obligations out there. You can take a look at yourself. So all companies in Canada must follow travel rules.
Okay, good. Let's move on to another question. I already also see there were some questions about it already in the chat. It's about opening bank accounts. So
Yes.
very often countries that received registration, even let's say if there is a license, I don't know why, usually it's accepted much better by a bank. It's a proper license. But when it's a registration, some banks, when it was a WASP regime in European Union or in other countries, some banks did not consider this as a license and were not very open to work with such clients. So what about Canada? If a business has a FINTRAC registration, MSB, because I'm sure if it's a PSP license or investment license, then I expect no problems at all. But if it's just a FinTrac registration, how easy it is to open an account in a bank in Canada?
Yes, Nico, if I may ask you to bring up my slide again. In the second last page, you will find the banking slide. So the next page, yes. Yes, so there are 3 categories of bank accounts which I feel will be very useful for our crypto business. So first is an operating account, which is the account that you use to pay for your everyday business expenses, your salaries, your vendors' fees, or potentially to receive investment from your investors. And these operating accounts can be offered in both Canadian dollars and US dollars. And there are many options that are available in this country that could allow you to have such an operating account, whether it is major banks or some payment service providers. They can also they can provide such an account. And this is what I call the first step for you to build your business in Canada. And this will allow you to have access to obviously the SWIFT network and the Payment Canada rails that are available in this country, e-transfers, EFTs, where you could do your business domestically and internationally. And the next one is the settlement account. I think a settlement account is probably the most key thing for most of the MSP business out there, because that is essentially the client-funded account where they use to transact their business. So, simply put, Nico is a business and you're soliciting business, in Canada or elsewhere, and client will wire funds into your accounts for the trading or for the purchase or the redemption of crypto. So that is the settlement account, and it could exist in multiple currencies. It could exist, through a payment provider or directly with a bank. I think directly with a bank is probably the most attractive proposition for a lot of the companies out there. There is a process for that, and sometimes it is complicated. But my job here is to simplify that process and to find the best solution for your business to tackle the right payment service provider or the banks for your needs. And once you have that, then you're able to do client-funded transactions, and that is the biggest sort of the way to jumpstart your volumes and your business. And lastly, cross-border transactions. So obviously everybody here is internationally aware that crypto is borderless, and we want to solicit business across the world. In Canada, we do have some service providers or international-based providers that could provide cross-border transactions for regulated Canadian entities. Again, it is very important for companies to be able to access different markets and to be able to receive different currencies through different payment networks. Again, I'm here to help to simplify that process and to make it easy for you to see what is the right fit and how much would you need to spend in acquiring these options for your business.
And based on your experience, is it relatively easy to open the account for a crypto business in Canada, or it's still like a process to go, a way to go?
If it was easy, we wouldn't be talking here. So, so I wouldn't say it's difficult, but I would say that you need to follow the process, understand the process, and then find obviously the right partners to help you in the process to get to where you are. And ultimately, people like me are going to be there to help you to understand which is the right solution for your business. Because you like, let's say if you're a small startup business, you're not going to have the same access as Coinbase, for example. That is just not happening. So you need to be realistic in terms of what you require. And then we take small steps for your business to grow. And that's what we're here for.
Okay. Let's move on to another questions. When it comes to initial coin offering, NFT business, DeFi, is there something that we also have some sort of regulation in Canada, or it's this Wild West, unregulated or gray zone?
So Canada has stopped being the Wild West as of 2017, 2018 in terms of ICO. So it's been a while since this country has implemented rules, especially from a security perspective for ICOs. Again, I strongly recommend people who are looking to do ICOs to talk to an expert, especially a compliance and legal expert, to help them to understand what are some of the requirements out there, and is it necessary to talk to a securities regulator about your offering? Likely, yes. And then, best case scenario, you may be able to offer some sort of crypto offering to accredited investors in this country. Again, there's a process for that. Or you can offer your crypto asset on the exempt market or through an EMB exempt market dealers. Again, there are many ways to do that. We're here to help you to look at each individual ICOs and offerings specifically, and to help you to find the easiest, the quickest, the most affordable route for you to do your business.
And my last question would be, because I see we already have many questions in the chat.
Yes.
Why would a business need to go to Canada? Why Canada for a crypto business? What are those advantages that Canada gives to a crypto business to open there and to regulate and to operate?
Again, I'll focus on two things. First is the first thing that I said in the beginning of this it's an interview, which is the registration-based system. This is fundamentally different from that of in the UK and the EU. It gives an opportunity and a chance for a small startup to succeed and to start somewhere. Even though it takes them to be a little bit longer now compared to before, but relatively speaking, compared to other G7 established markets, Canada remains a very attractive place to start your fintech crypto payment business. Just to give you an example, if you want to go to the US, if you want to be registered as a MSP, first you have to go to the FinTech to obtain your registration. And then after that, you want to operate in each individual states. You have to get your MTL license. Then you have to put up your bond for your each MTL license. The average street cost to put up all the bonds in the US plus the FinTech registration will run you anywhere between $2 to $3 million. That is unfathomable for any small startup business, and that simply is not feasible. In compared to the very strict regulatory requirements and licensing regime in the EU, again, it is not friendly for business to come to disrupt the market if they have a unique product proposition. So again, Canada offers something very different. So again, it is not a quick fixed solution. It has a process, but it's very competitive compared to other G7 markets in the world. So if your goal is to be regulated in a G7 market, I would say Canada is probably one of the most advantageous and competitive market out there compared to the other markets that are available.
Thank you, Issac. Thank you for the interview. Now I think it's a time to open the floor for the question of our listeners. And we have the first question from Nazar. If I have MSB license, could I do business in Latin America or other countries?
So very good question. I came across this question before. I would strongly recommend to going to the rules of individual countries in terms of the payment service providers requirements and what are the requirements to solicit visit in those countries. Now, the Canadian regulator is not going to care much about what goes on in Peru or Colombia in terms of how its business's regulation is structured for payments. But what we can do as sort of advisors and consultants here is to draft your business where your business in, let's say, Canada and Latin America will have minimal amount of friction for you to operate. So let's just say if you're doing cross-border transactions between Canada and Colombia for international students or for trades, we are here to help you to ensure that if you're a registered Canadian entity, if you're a regulated Canadian entity, what are some of the best options out there for you to engage business, let's say in countries like Colombia, Peru, Mexico, and etc., or even Brazil. Again, if there's stablecoin involved, we're here to help. We have done business and helped many business in the Latin America region where Canada is a very big market for them because of trade, because of international students, because just simply the people that exist on two sides of the borders. They have families there. So again, we're here to help.
Thank you. Another question. Which stablecoins are actually allowed to trade in Canada right now, not regarded as securities?
So stablecoin is a hot topic. Everybody knows that Circle's the IPO has generated a huge momentum in the stablecoin business. And I just want to give people a heads up. Yesterday, ShakePay has announced. So ShakePay is one of the biggest trading platform, a BTC oriented trading platform in this country. They have announced that in 2026, in partnership with a few other regulated entities and banks, they're going to be offering their own Canadian dollar denominated stablecoin. And this is something that's very, obviously it's a good news for the industry. That means that stablecoin is picking up momentum. Now, being in a stablecoin business myself for the past couple of years, I would say that USDC is available, I believe, through most of the crypto exchanges. Unfortunately, USDT is not, and there are various reasons as to why. And if you ask me, stablecoin trade regarded as securities, I don't believe any stablecoin, when it's structured correctly, they are not securities. However, the provincial securities regulator have a different view on that. So I believe USDC is probably your safest option in this country for stablecoin in this moment.
Thank you. Let's move on. If the MSB is under payment facilitator license, so the settlements go direct to customer, not via the MSB, thus it's considered as holding customer funds.
So I believe this question is related. If you're delivering the settlement to the client directly, immediately, without holding to their funds, does it, constitute as you're holding client funds? The answer is that as long as you deliver it immediately and there's no intention to hold on to client funds, then you're not considered to hold client funds. So even though, like, let's say we're facilitating the trade, even crypto to crypto, there is a moment where Nico, for example, as the OTC desk, is in possession of my asset for briefly about 2 to 3 hours until Nico transfer the assets to me. I believe the window is about 24 hours. As long as within 24 hours, Nico settles the trade and it delivers the asset to the client, then that is not constituted as holding client funds.
Thank you. So, do you know any crypto exchanges that let you deposit and withdraw in Canadian dollars?
All of the major regulated crypto exchanges and platforms, they allow you to deposit and withdraw in Canadian dollars. You could do it through either at e-transfers, you could do it through EFTs, and you could potentially do wires if you're looking at larger trades.
In terms of consulting that you do, so I understand you do consulting on the law and regulation, but when it comes to helping companies to find personnel, for example, compliance officers or money laundering reporting officers, do you also help with this for Canadian?
Yeah. Sorry to cut you off, but absolutely, that's something that we do. And fractional cameras and an experienced camera to help you to build your Canadian MSB is at the core of our business.
Okay. So let's move on. Are there any specific legal monetary penalties or regulatory consequences under Canadian law for non-compliance with operational requirements? For example, there are particular risk management standards or wallet custody ratios mandated by regulators.
So FinTrac does not look at operational risk. So that's something I want to put it clear. FinTrack only looks at your compliance with PTML TFA. For operational risk requirement, that falls more under the RPAA requirements that's currently out there for PSPs, and for securities regulated crypto trading platforms out there. So RPA is very new. There have not been any enforcements as to the operational compliance requirements, because we're still looking at how to comply with the operational risk and IT risk, and so a whole bunch of other stuff under RPA. So we don't have any non-compliance fine right now for operational risk requirements at this moment. But of course, if you look at banks on the other side, OSPI has headed out numerous fines and issues with banks in the past about operational requirements. But that is not today's audience. I don't believe anybody in this audience today owns a bank. So MSB is what we're really focusing on.
Okay, thank you. Are there any legal requirements for companies like crypto exchanges managing user funds to have a certain percentage stored with a qualified custodian in Canada?
If you're holding onto client funds, the answer is yes. There are a long list of requirements in terms of how you need to be compliant with using the qualified custodian in Canada to hold onto client both fiat or crypto funds.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So I understand you help also companies to open bank accounts in Canada. And there is one question in relation to this. What about safeguarding accounts? Could it be opened in a e-money institution from the UK or EU?
So safeguarding client funds, fiat funds specifically, right now is a very big topic, and the Bank of Canada and many other industry participants are coming out with ways that we can be compliant with safeguarding client funds. And the question is, if the question from the audience is, could it be open in EMI from the UK or the EU? Then you're talking about a jurisdiction that's outside in Canada at this moment. I believe in the EU and the UK, they have their own separate safeguarding requirements for EMIs. And I believe if you fulfill those requirements in your home jurisdiction, it is likely that the requirements in Canada will be similar. So once that safeguarding requirement is fulfilled in the EU and the UK, I believe you won't have too much of a challenge in Canada fulfilling the requirements here.
But it is possible to have such several accounts in the EMI in UK or EU, not in Canadian EMI or bank.
This is an ongoing discussion. I don't want to speak for obviously the regulator, and I'm not in a position to do that. And everybody is industry participant. Everybody is trying to find out what is the best way to do that. And let's say circumstances like this, how business react, or how will the business comply with that. Just again to stress, RBA is very new. Bank of Canada is very new. Everybody's very new to this, so there is going to be a process where people finding out this situation, that situation, this situation. So again, it's an ongoing process.
Okay, thank you. Another question from Nikita. Are the issuers of the stable coins required to register under any licensing regime in Canada, the same as in Europe, or not?
The issuers of stablecoin required to register under any Canada, or I would say yes. So again, if we're talking about obviously larger issuers like Circle or Tether, Circle is I believe was part of the registration process, but I'm not sure about where they are with the regulator. But if you want to issue a stablecoin in Canada for Canadian consumers, are to be listed on a Canadian regulated trading crypto platform, you are required to register with securities regulator in this country, which will ask you to hold your assets, your reserves with a qualified custodian, etc. So again, there's a long slew of requirements on that.
And the last question that we have for today about compliance officer. Is there a requirement that this person should reside in Canada, or it can also reside somewhere else in the world?
There's no legal requirements for the residency of the CAMRO, but I do highly recommend, if anybody were to do business in Canada, that they have their CAMRO to be at least a Canadian individual. And I say that because, obviously as part of my advocacy for this country, we want to bring employment opportunities. We want to bring investment into this country. Because if we have all these companies, like you said, they're just jurisdiction shopping. I myself was not a fan of that. We want to make sure that the people in this country are benefiting from all these investments, and we can obviously make money in this market, but it has to be a fair two-way trade for everybody. And I am a strong advocate to, if you are a regulated Canadian MSME business, it is in your interest to look for a Canadian-based professional to help you with your needs.
Thank you, Isaac. And I think we had today's very insightful discussion. For me, it was also something new that Canada is a registration, let's say, based approach. And then it gives also more freedom, or the entrance to the market is much lower and less strict than in the countries that have a very comprehensive licensing regime. For sure, it's a big plus for Canada that gives a lot of advantages to the business. So thank you again, you, for your expertise, and also to all of you who for your very active engagement. We hope to.
Sorry, I believe there's one question that was missed from Andre on the question of, could you recommend any Canadian banks for EMI that are open to working with crypto companies? So a short answer is yes. The answer is yes to that question.
Yeah, I didn't answer because we already discussed that you help companies to open bank accounts, and that you can recommend it. So thank you again, everyone. Have a nice evening, and I hope to see you at our next webinar.
Thank you. Bye-bye.